Hey guys, welcome back to the Glory Living channel. My name is Hannah and we just arrived at the garden. I'm going to do a little bit of work today and I wanted to talk to you guys today about how we manage our garden. We live 30 minutes away and yet we are able to keep our garden pretty much weed free and also pest free. And I want to share with you what nobody was able to share with us directly on how you can easily do that and give you some advice to keep the pests out of your garden, to keep the weeds out of your garden, and to have a pretty easy garden. We live 30 minutes away and can handle it, and if we can do it in that situation, then you can definitely do it. All right, let's go check it out. Okay, so as I've explained before, we don't have room at our rental house to do a large garden. We grow in a lot of containers and we grow a lot there, but as far as the amount that I want to grow, I just can't do it there. But we have family who has lent us land to do our garden on 30 minutes away from our house. So 30 minutes is a far drive, especially with little ones, to manage a garden. And if you want to keep weeds out of the garden, you got to be on top of that and really do a good job. And it can be very hard, especially in areas like this of the country that have, I always call it Bermuda grass. I've heard it called creeping grass and other things. I'm not sure exactly the name for it, but it is the worst grass you will ever encounter. And as far as maintaining it, keeping it out of your garden beds, it's so incredibly hard. It spreads like crazy. So we have two things that we use as far as keeping pests out and keeping weeds down. And I want to show those to you today. I've done videos on some of this in the past, but I want to talk about it again today because it's been a while and I think it's just really helpful. When we first started gardening here, we had such an issue keeping pests out, especially the deer and the groundhogs. And there are also lots of raccoons and rabbits around here. But this method has been such a game changer and has totally protected our garden and our food from being attacked by the pests. And it has been so amazing in how our garden flourishes. Okay, so as far as the pests go, you can see right here, you can see over here on this side, on the left side, there is a fence line that has deer fencing. That is the inside perimeter, and on the outside over here on the right side, we have, on the right side here, we have an electric fencing. If you can see the rows of T-posts here and the rows of T-posts here. These are about 6 feet apart. So you'll have a fence going around the immediate perimeter of your garden. And then if you go 6 feet out wider, you'll do a second fence. The materials are not as much what matters as much as the double fence when it comes to keeping deer out. Although deer can jump high, they have a problem with their depth perception. They're not good at judging the distance in which they are jumping. And what happens when you put two fences is they're afraid that they won't make it and they'll get stuck in between the two fences. They just can't tell the distance. And so they are afraid to jump over. There are people who have success keeping the deer out other ways. We did not. Fishing line was kind of like a joke to them. And yes, you can always experiment more with that, but the problem is if deer get into your garden even over one night, they can cause so much destruction and they just love eating your veggies. And I don't blame them, I do too, except they're eating the plants and it's all that hard work that we really need to protect. So if we did not have this up, our deer would absolutely eat the garden and there would be no food for our family to eat from it, which would be a waste of time and money. So it's so important for us to really have a kind of a really as perfect plan as possible on our part. You can't predict everything, you can't control nature, but to try and keep them out the best we can. Now, this isn't necessary for everybody, but for us, it was super beneficial. Our outside perimeter, our very outside fence, we chose to do electric fencing. And the reason we did that is because there are so many pests around here. We wanted to give a little extra pushback. Do not come near the garden to these animals. Raccoons, groundhogs, deer, we have tons of them. The rabbits, it's not low enough. The rabbits just go on under. But we have a way of keeping them out as well, which I'll show you in a minute. So the electric fence was an extra thing that we wanted to do. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but we did it because it was just so much more helpful in keeping everything else out. There is a neighborhood groundhog that is so destructive and thinks he totally should have a tomato out of the garden, or 200 of them, because he has just been around, and we had him get into our garden a few years ago and destroy all of our tomatoes. We had beautiful, I mean, probably hundreds of green tomatoes on the vine. And he came through like in a very short amount of time and just like ate them all, was able to get through our fencing ideas that we had in the past that really just didn't work for us. Okay, so now on the inside of the fencing. Now, I've got this big galvanized fencing behind me, but that is not what we used last year. This was just because I ran out of the deer fencing. The deer fencing, you've seen this, it's sometimes viewed as bird netting too. It is just a thin nylon with probably 3/4 inch squares. Bear with me on this wind, it's really picking up. So we use the deer fencing. It's just a nylon deer fencing, probably 3/4 inch squares. It's 7 feet by 100 feet. Okay, so that is what we use. But here's the issue. The rabbits can totally chew through that. So what we have at the bottom is a fake chicken wire. It was the cheapest chicken wire we could find on Amazon. It was like 30 bucks for like 150 feet of it, 2 feet high. It shouldn't even be called chicken wire. But we put that on the bottom and it works great. We stapled it down with the tarp underneath. We'll show you that, our woven weed fabric underneath. That makes it so nothing digs under, nothing pushes under, nothing chews through. It has kept out everything. That's probably about as fast as I can explain that to you guys so that you have a good idea of how this works. It's 2 lines of fencing that keeps out the deer, and making sure you have something low to keep out the rabbits, as well as something that the raccoons and groundhogs aren't going to feel like they can come through or chew through if you have a problem with those as well. Okay, so this woven weed fabric is next. This is how we keep down the weeds. We had tried things like straw and newspaper and methods like that, but living so far away, having little kids, and they're getting older obviously each year, which makes it a little easier, but especially a few years ago, it was very hard. Whether I was super pregnant or having a toddler or having both of them, it just makes it very difficult to weed when you're not there, when it's not at your house. If it was at my house, I could go after they go to sleep or while they're napping, but it just made it so hard to travel 30 minutes and also care for the garden. Worth it to us, but still difficult. This has made it so easy. Now, I know that not everybody loves the woven weed fabric because they don't like plastic on their plants. You know what, guys, I think for me is about picking your battles. That is not a battle or hill that I'm willing to die on. This is so worth it to me to be able to grow a lot of our own food, and no matter what, it's gonna be way better than what I'd be getting at the grocery store anyway. So as far as this plastic versus probably what's at the grocery store, even organic, I think this is still a higher quality yield. So I'm not worried about it. I mean, that's how I feel, but everybody can do what they feel comfortable with when it comes to these sort of choices. For us, this is worth it. It's a game changer and it's like a lifesaver. So we have loved this. There is a huge difference though between cheap black plastic, which I'm going to show you, and woven weed fabric. Okay, so I want you to hear me out here. Cheap black plastic that is almost like tarp-like material. It is thin, it is flimsy, and it is not permeable when it comes to water, okay? It will not let the water through. If you get this woven weed fabric, we get DeWitt Sunbelt woven weed fabric. You've probably seen it all over line if you like watching gardening videos. People love this stuff and there's a good reason for it. It is awesome. It works so great. It lets the water through. I actually took a video on my phone. If it's not blurry, I could show it in this video. If it is, I just won't. Of the difference between how the water settles on cheap black plastic versus woven weed fabric, and the other stuff will puddle and the other stuff on the woven weed fabric will just, the water on the black plastic will puddle, the water through the woven weed fabric will go through. It doesn't mean it won't puddle at all, but it will slowly come through, especially as you wear in the plastic. So it's amazing. It does not let the weeds through, and if it lets any through, it's not remotely comparable to if you did not have it at all. It is so helpful. So we lay it down. We have the 4-foot wide ones. We lay it down and then we overlap it by a few inches, maybe 6 inches, maybe a little less. It just depended. It wasn't perfectly measured. But I also want to show you something. Do you see this strip of dirt behind me? That is because we had bought some cheap black plastic to fill in areas where it wasn't necessary to have the more expensive, higher quality DeWitt woven weed fabric. We decided to cover the outer perimeter as well in between the 2 fences, and we wanted some of that cheap plastic for it, and we did it right here in between our squash rows just as a walking row. This stuff stinks, and it really does. It rips through your staples. It gets super hot. The water doesn't come through. It stinks, and it's the reason why it's so affordable. So it'll do the job for this year, just in junk places that it doesn't matter. But you know what? It showed me, and you see it coming up in other places. This is not the DeWitt fabric where you see the dirt or the grass coming through or coming up. That is the cheap black plastic that can't even be held down by staples because it just rips through. I'm sure there's higher quality plastic that wouldn't do that as easily. But when the wind starts whipping, you want something strong and something that's gonna let water through. So it's very important that you get the correct kind, because you could have a really bad experience using the wrong black plastic over your plants and think that it's this DeWitt Sunbelt stuff, but really it's just something else. It's frying your plants, not letting the water come through and gonna rip and blow away easy. This doesn't mean that this is a totally maintenance-free garden. It still has its needs. Gardening is hard work. No matter how you do it, it's still going to require work and work ethic. And you know what, though, for me, it's totally worth it, but this makes it so much easier and so much doable. So much more doable. You know, when the weeds were like crazy a few years ago and when we were really starting out, it was like nobody even wanted to go into the garden because you're like, are there gonna be snakes in there? How do we deal with this? And we were a little bit younger too, so you just mature and learn how to take care of things better. Either way, this has been great for us. And if you need a low maintenance garden too, if that's the season of life you're in or just the preferences that you have, this is a great option. There are other great options like Back to Eden gardening and doing lasagna gardening and how they and different methods like that do really work well. But they take time and they take years. And if you don't have that, but you want to grow a garden and you don't have the time to put in to not only just building the soil, which takes years, but all the weeding and management that will go into it in the meantime, but you still want to grow a garden, this is a great option. We love this stuff. It's so good. It works so good. We're so happy to have it. We live 30 minutes away. We have a young family. It can be hard to manage these types of hobbies, especially a garden this size that has hundreds of plants in it and will grow hundreds of pounds of food. And if you're already in a situation where you want to do stuff like that, you need to make it as easy as possible. You need to have good systems in place. And so, you know, this has been an absolute game changer. Last year, we did not have animals devouring our food. We did not have weeds taking over the entire garden. It was just like amazing to come into the garden and just pick our harvest. It's not impossible to do. It is not just a pipe dream. You can do it too, and you can make gardening fun and enjoyable for you in whatever season of life that you are in. There are other ways of gardening, like I said, to keep down weeds and keep pests out. For us, this has been just the gold standard. Last year, the only pest that we had getting into our garden that caused issues during the summer season was rabbits, and then we figured out how to keep them out too. Other than that, it was working perfectly. We found some evidence of voles here as well, but we've done things to eradicate those as well. And have things in place to try and keep them out additionally too. You might hear them buzzing. I don't know whether they're working or not, but so far so good. Everything's been all right. So guys, I hope this helps kind of give you some ideas on how you can keep your garden low maintenance as well. Gardening's always going to be hard work, but it doesn't have to be totally a killer of all of your time. So I hope this video was helpful to you in giving you some ideas that you can implement if you are having the same problems we were having. If we can handle a garden 30 minutes away from our house with these methods, then you can definitely do it whatever situation you're in as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful to you. If it was, please give it a thumbs up. Please like the video, please share it with your friends and your family, and please subscribe to the channel. It's one of the best ways you can help support us in creating these videos for you. Thank you guys, and until next time, we'll see you soon.